Roughly 3 years ago, if you were looking to buy the ultimate version of the Cadillac Escalade, you were looking at an Escalade V. It got that title courtesy of a 6.2-liter supercharged V8 making up to 682 horsepower, making it the most powerful version of the Escalade at its time. However, that was then, and about a year ago, Cadillac introduced the very first ever all-electric version of the Escalade called the Escalade IQ, and it also boosted some pretty impressive stats, up to 750 horsepower, and the more important number, up to 460 miles of range, courtesy of its massive 205 kilowatt-hour battery pack. So as you can see this week, Cadillac has loaned us the latest version of the Escalade IQ, a 2025 Sport 2 trim level painted in black raven. And the big question I want to answer for those of you who are looking for the ultimate version of the Escalade, does that title now belong to the new Escalade IQ? Stay tuned to find out. Now, before we start talking about the exterior styling differences between the Escalade IQ and the gas-powered version, let me go ahead and show you guys if this vehicle has a front trunk storage space, because that's always the million-dollar question when you're talking about an EV. And because this vehicle is built off of the Ultium architecture, something that it shares with the Hummer EV, as you can see, it has a pretty massive front trunk storage space. Now, underneath the hood, as you can see, this is very, very usable. In fact, Cadillac says you get around 12.2 cubic feet of storage space up here. 12.2 is typically what you find in like a compact sedan. So it's kind of crazy to think that this car has all this front trunk storage space. In fact, I actually tested it myself. You can fit 3 22-inch roller bags in the actual front trunk of this vehicle, and that's before you even factor in the space in the back. So again, this is a really nice amount of interior or cargo space that you don't get in the gas-powered Escalade because there is no engine. It's also a really nicely carpeted area with some tie-down hooks. You have an actual 12-volt power outlet in here. You have an LED light, and there's a little button there to help get you out in case somebody has decided to stuff you in the front trunk area. But since we're underneath here, let's go ahead and talk about the powertrain specs. Now, here in America, Cadillac makes it pretty simple when you want to buy this thing. It is only offered in one configuration for the powertrain: standard dual electric motors, so electronic all-wheel drive. It draws its power from a massive, and I mean massive, 212 kilowatt-hour battery pack. About 205 of that is actually usable. It's the same battery pack with 24 modules as the GMC Hummer EV pickup truck, this vehicle makes 680 horsepower and 615 pound-feet of torque. Now, if you push the V button on the steering wheel, that's going to activate the V Max mode. That'll increase the power output to 750 horsepower and 785 pound-feet of torque. So again, a very big boost. So this vehicle makes essentially the same horsepower as the Escalade V, and then you push a button and it literally makes up to 750. So that again is very impressive. It all goes out through a 1-speed reduction gear transmission, and Cadillac says in V Max mode you should be able to hit 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds. We'll test it out when we get this vehicle out on the road. Now, top speed should be around 130 miles an hour. This is still a massive luxury SUV, and it can tow up to 8,000 pounds. And as this vehicle sits, it's also a really heavy, and I mean heavy ass vehicle, weighing in at just over 9,100 pounds. Compared to the last Escalade V that I tested, this vehicle weighs almost 3,000 pounds heavier, and again, it's because of that huge battery pack. Now, thankfully, it also can DC fast charge pretty quick. It has a 19.2 kilowatt onboard charger for level 2, and it can also accept up to 350 kilowatts if you can find a level 3 350 kilowatt charger. But if you want to close up the hood here, there's a little button, a pressure pad. Just push that to that, right underneath that area. You can see it'll power close the actual front trunk or the hood. As you can see, the styling of this vehicle is very much befitting of the Escalade name. It has that classic art and science design theme here. It's something that Cadillac first introduced years ago, but it's really translated well onto their EV architecture. You can see my test car here is painted in black raven. This is actually a free color. I don't particularly like black cars. They don't show great for on camera, but when they're clean, they certainly look nice. Lots of reflections in the actual paint. It has that classic sinister look that Escalades are known for. You can see the crest grille, which is obviously closed off, has been updated, of course, modernized with LED lighting accents throughout the grille. As you can see, the Cadillac logo is also lit up. There's some black chrome that's courtesy of the Sport package. The sport trim is basically an extra $500 over the luxury trim. You can see the full LED headlights have this really beautiful kind of stacked arrangement with the LED individual diodes. You can see there's a sequential LED turn signal, that LED daytime running light there with the headlights kind of does a sequent dynamic animation dance whenever you lock or unlock the vehicle or approach the vehicle. So it's kind of creating a really cool light show as you first walk up to the car. You can see there are some functional openings down here with active grille shutters. There's the front camera, front parking sensors, and this vehicle of course comes standard with their Super Cruise functionality. What this car does lack, however, are any fog lights, but as you can see, it certainly has a big presence to it. When you walk up to it, this is just big and in your face, exactly what you'd expect from an Escalade. Now, even though it shares a name with the regular Escalade, this is actually built off of a different architecture. It's the Ultium battery architecture, so it's a dedicated EV platform, and it's also much larger than the standard Escalade. In fact, this car in its standard form, there's also a longer L version that was just introduced, is actually almost the same size as the Escalade ESV. So it has a wheelbase of 136.2, which is around 15 inches longer than the standard Escalade. It's also 2 inches longer than the Escalade ESV, with an overall length of 224.3 inches long. Again, it is around a foot longer than the standard Escalade, but also around 2 inches shorter than the Escalade ESV. If you get the IQ, it stretches around 4.4 inches longer at just over 228 inches long, making this vehicle in the L version the longest production SUV that Cadillac has ever built. It's also around 94 inches wide. That's with the power mirrors opened. So again, it's also one of the widest vehicles you're going to find as well. Now, being that this is the ultimate Escalade, according to Cadillac, it also comes with the biggest wheels as standard. These are a 24-inch wheel, that's right, I said 24-inch wheel, riding on a 275 by 50 R24 tire. It's a Michelin Primacy LTX road tire. Cadillac says the brake rotors at all four corners measure 18 inches in diameter, which that number I was kind of wondering if it's a typo. It might include the extra size that you get from the caliper. It would make it the biggest production brakes I've ever seen. This car comes standard with a 4-corner air suspension, which can raise and lower the vehicle up to 2 inches, and it also has their Magno relogical dampers in their 4th generation. Cadillac says in the normal mode, you have around 7.8 inches of ground clearance. Again, you can jack that up if you'd like or drop it an inch. It also comes standard with rear wheel steering, which also includes Cadillac's arrival mode, which is their version of the GMC Hummer crab walk, where the wheels in the back can turn in the same direction in the front at low speeds, and you can kind of do, again, a very staggering looking arrival as you approach the vehicle, only at low speeds. The rear wheels turn up to 7 degrees, which is a little bit less than the Hummer. I like how Cadillac does a full paint finish along the side. You have an integrated turn signal here on the fender with more black chrome, along with these black painted mirrors. They're massive mirrors, necessary, of course, for how big this car is. Full 360 camera, of course. There's a Cadillac logo here. They also power fold. The door handles, as you can see, they look traditional, but there's actually a pressure pad on the back to open them. And then you can see all Escalade IQs come standard with a panoramic glass roof. Sadly, that doesn't open up to vent air. It also doesn't have any roof rails as standard. You can get that as part of an option. And then moving over to the back here, this is where the rear end of this car doesn't necessarily look like an Escalade, and that's because it has the look of like a Cadillac Lyriq with an optic. For example, this has, again, their latest design language. There's a tapered off rear end, as you can see here, that actually does shrink the headroom and the third row space and the cargo space compared to the L version. The L actually has a more squared off rear profile in addition to being around 4 inches longer. I prefer the look of the Escalade IQ L. That's a 2026 model year technically. This is the one that's already available at dealerships. I personally might wait for the L because I think it looks better and it gives you a little bit more space. Now, looking at the rear, you can see lots of really interesting design cues. Obviously, you have the stacked vertical tail lights, typical of an Escalade, where they're full LEDs. There's also an accent up at the lower portion where the glass is. There's also a little cutout there where it's actually part of the sheet metal, not a full light bar LED. I kind of appreciate how Cadillac's not doing the light bar across the middle like everybody else. Again, there's some big badging here. The IQ badge right under the Escalade lets you know this is electric. That number there stands for the torque in Newton meters. E4 means all-wheel drive. I think that's a really stupid badge there. I personally would remove that entirely. I feel like Cadillac was just looking for something to put there on the other side, but I don't think it's necessary. The bumper, as you can see, is a little more aggressive on the Sport 2. The tires, as you can see, are also massive. Big airbags underneath there to support this 9,000 plus pound vehicle, which is crazy. And then if you want to access the trunk area, you actually push the Cadillac logo. Now, I have some issues with that. First of all, it actually decided to open for me even though I didn't actually push it. I don't like how the logo, it feels like it actually seems a little bit loose and it's a little like not aligned properly. But once you kind of push that and open it, you can see the cargo space back here is a little bit less versus the standard gas-powered Escalade in the standard wheelbase form. Now you still get behind the third row up to 23.6 cubic feet of space. That's around 2 cubic feet less versus what you get in the standard gas-powered Escalade. The IQ just gives you The IQL, I'm sorry, just gives you an additional 1 cubic feet. So again, it's not that much, but it's also still very usable. You can see nice carpeted area. If you look underneath here, there's also a little bit of underfloor storage. Looks like there's also a fix-a-flat kit. There's no spare tire with this vehicle. And then if you want, you can basically push this button here. That will fold the rear seats down. You do have to hold it, which takes a second to allow this thing to fold down. It can also be kind of finicky, but there you go. Once you push and hold that, you can see folding that down, it expands the cargo to around 69 cubic feet of space, which is pretty good. The IQL goes up to around 75 cubic feet, which is actually the same as the standard wheelbase gas Escalade. If you fold down the second row, it expands to around 119 cubic feet of storage space, which is probably the most you're going to find in the electric SUV space. Keep in mind, again, the L is going to increase that to around 126 cubic feet of space. That is around a little bit less versus the standard gas-powered Escalade wheelbase. The ESV, however, offers up to 140-ish cubic feet of space. So keep that in mind. If you guys were hoping this would have the same space as your ESV, it's actually going to be around the same space on the inside as the standard wheelbase gas-powered Escalade. Now, once you've moved past the absolutely massive dimensions of the new Escalade IQ, let's go ahead and hop into the interior, because this is supposed to be the ultimate Escalade. So you better believe that GM or Cadillac has equipped it with one of the most luxurious cabins you've ever seen. Before we get inside, you can see here is the key fob for the vehicle. This is Cadillac's current intelligent access fob, which is again a variation of the key fob you see on other GM products with the Cadillac logo. It has lots of buttons here, obviously, for lock, unlock, remote start. You can also power open the front trunk, the rear cargo area, and there's a panic function. Sadly and surprisingly, Cadillac doesn't offer a phone as a key functionality. You can use your smartphone to access the vehicle via the My Cadillac app, where you can remote start it and ping the vehicle. But they really need to hurry up and add like a phone as a key option. That's a feature that I think a lot of customers in this space are really looking for. Now, as you can see, approaching the vehicle, I mentioned earlier, these door handles don't retract or anything like that. If you want to lock the car, you basically just touch that little area there. That should lock the door, although for some reason it's not. When you do have the vehicle locked, the mirrors will power fold in. And when you want to unlock the door, you basically just have to touch the back and then push this little pressure pad. And my test car, because it has that Sport 2 package, has the power opening and closing door. So basically push that, it has a sensor in the door, and it'll actually open the door all the way. Now you can change that setting to go to like a normal, maybe like a half open, or you can turn it off entirely. I prefer it to open up the max amount because it has sensors, again, that'll keep you from hitting things when the door opens. But as you can see, looking at the interior, my test car has very much a color combination that I think is what people should go for. If you guys go for the Black Raven, this is the Camilla Nuva Lux interior. So this is technically a synthetic leather material. It's not a real leather, but it has the feel of real leather. It looks expensive. I love the contrast stitching, the actual perforations here, because these seats are heated, ventilated, and massaging. And you can see with the Sport 2 package, you get the upgraded 38 speaker AKG premium audio system, which sounds amazing. If you guys add that executive rear seat package for $7,500, it actually increases the speaker count to 42. You can see the door panel has some really nice materials, leather stitching with contrast stitch, real wood trim, although I wish the wood was a matte finish instead of the glossy finish. The seats adjust in 16 different ways for both the driver and passenger, and you also have two-person memory on both sides, heated and cooled seats. Like I said, nice padded leather here, and you can see piano black plastic and nice high quality feeling window controls, which feel unique to this car, along with metal speakers for the AKG audio system. Down here, surprisingly, it is hard touch plastic. This should have been covered in real leather, I think, especially considering the price point. Now, the annoying GM bong is going off because the car is technically already on. There's no start-stop button in this vehicle, which is kind of annoying. But when you want to get inside, you basically just put your foot on the brake. That will automatically shut the door for you because of that power opening and closing door feature. And as you can see, the car basically has a sensor where it knows the key fob is in here, my butt is in the seat, so now it's turned everything on, which is kind of what you expect with a lot of EVs. Again, no start-stop button in here, but there is an off button here if you want to turn off the vehicle manually through there. Again, there is a feature here where you can go to this area here, you can go to the doors, or I'm sorry, here, go to doors, and I can basically open and close all 4 of the doors from this little screen right here, which, as you can see, the screen can be a little finicky at times, but when you do that, all the doors pretty much opened up, and it's a really cool party trick, I have to say. If you guys are, looking to impress people when you drive a vehicle like this. And the other cool thing is just put your foot on the brake. That'll close only the driver's door. However, if you want to close all of the doors, you have to manually do so here. I actually kind of wish it would close all the doors, but I imagine it doesn't do that as a safety feature in case people are still getting in and out of the vehicle. Now, of course, once you're inside the Escalade IQ's interior, how could you not notice the infotainment display? Because this vehicle has a screen that stretches 55 inches across. That's right, 55 inches from pillar to pillar. It's almost like Cadillac saw the 48-inch display in Lincoln's and was just like, hey, we can actually up you by around 7 inches. So again, it's kind of like a tech war. A tech war is going on right now with the infotainment screens and how much excessiveness we can do. And I have to say, it is very overwhelming at first, but I also like the placement of these screens here because they're kind of right there in your line of sight where you can easily just glance down from the windshield down here to see all the information. You can see this area here is not a touch screen. This is a touch screen, and that's a touch screen for the passenger side, obviously. Now, it's technically comprised of 2 screens. So there's one display here and another separate display over here. And then you also get another display over here. I believe this is 12 inches. This is where you can kind of control the climate. This is a much better position where you want to actually interact with the screen and make some physical adjustments and whatnot. This is a little bit of a far reach. I actually don't like how this is such a far reach. In the Lincoln vehicles, you can't actually touch the upper screen. You instead interact via the screen in the center. Cadillac lets you do both, which I find to be a little bit more infuriating because, again, this is a far reach for somebody like my height. So kind of keep that in mind. You can see there is Google built in with all the usual voice commands. What this system does lack, however, is wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. And that's because this is the electric version. They don't actually put wireless CarPlay in this vehicle because GM seems to think that people who want EVs, you're going to use the native system anyways, and then they claim it's a better system versus using wireless phone integration. You can see the steering wheel has a power tilt and telescoping mechanism, which offers a good amount of adjustability and range. It's an interesting 2-spoke design. Lots of buttons here for your Super Cruise. This is where you access the V-Max driving mode, where you can access the full 750 horsepower. This is your distance markers here. There's a paddle here to control max regen braking. You have your wiper controls here, your gear selector here, audio controls over here. The Cadillac logo looks pretty nice. The horn, it sounds pretty nondescript, but appropriate tone given the size of this vehicle. A few more buttons over here where you can control the air suspension, open up the hood and the front or the rear cargo, along with your dimmer control. There's more of that shiny wood grain trim here on the dash, which again, I would have preferred a matte finish wood versus the shiny wood. And then this gear selector controls the 1-speed reduction gear transmission. You push the end here to go to park, pull it toward you and hold it to go to neutral, push it up to go into reverse. You can see there's your full 360 camera, which gives you trajectory. It gives you cross traffic alert and braking in the front and in the rear. The quality and the resolution I think is fine. It's nothing super special. And this vehicle also offers a feature where if you signal right and left, when the vehicle is moving, if I exit out of this, it actually will show you what's in your blind spot. Although what I don't like about this feature is if you have like a GPS going, it actually will completely blank out the directions for the GPS map and give you a really crunchy graphic resolution there for the screen. You can turn that off every time you initiate a turn signal if you'd like into the settings. But again, I think Cadillac should have used that little screen in here because this again is kind of useless as opposed to taking up my map display over here. So that's something that I'm hoping they'll adjust with a software update, which by the way, it's actually telling me a software update is available now to download. Now, looking at the rest of the interior, you can see there's a soft touch injection molded plastic up here, real leather down here with actual stitching in addition to the wood and the alloy trim. I appreciate how there's traditional manual vents here as opposed to powered vents on some electric SUVs. Your trailer brake controller is over here. This screen, as I mentioned earlier, controls your headlights. If you want to adjust the headlights, you can see they're actually in the screen here. Most of you just will leave it on auto. There's even a turn headlight reminder on in case idiots are out there that don't have their headlights in auto and you forget to turn off your headlights or on your headlights at night. Your climate functions are of course down here. Your seat controls are over here where you can turn on the heated and cooled seats. The massage function is also accessed here, or you can also push the button here on the seat to access the massage. You can see there's a total of 5 different types of massage, 3 different intensities. It's on the driver and the passenger. That's included if you guys go for the luxury or sport 2 package. Which is definitely what you expect in a vehicle like this. This is where you can kind of adjust a couple of settings. Your drive settings over here. This vehicle has 2 different levels of regen braking, technically 3 if you count the off feature, which is something that I imagine some people are going to really prefer. And then if you go to like the park controls here, it also has an auto parallel park feature, and you can open and close the doors from here like I showed you before. The GPS, like I showed you here, is the same system that you find on your computer basically. It's Google Maps. And you can also go to the home display here that brings up all your usual options here, including Spotify and Amazon Music. You can also download apps via the Google Play Store, and it also will read text messages aloud to you, and you can also talk to it with voice to text. Again, if you're looking for Apple Music, however, this is where the system doesn't have that, and I think that's where a wireless Apple CarPlay functionality would have been great. Your drive mode selectors are here. You can see there's a My Mode, a Tour, a Sport, Snow, Ice, and then a Tow Haul. In addition to the VMAX mode, you just push that, it goes into VMAX to give you maximum power, or you can also just push the button there, which I like how Cadillac gave you an actual button if you don't want to have to go through the actual screen to get to that. So overall, I do think the screen is a little bit dim. I wanted it to be a little bit brighter. It's on full brightness now, but again, I wanted it to be a little bit brighter. The positioning of it is fine, but again, this is a far reach for me, and I would have preferred to just control everything down here as opposed to have to reach up here, then just find information here where you can kind of customize that. Over here on the passenger side, you can see this is where you can also pull up different information. On my side, when you're driving, that actually gets blanked out, and it also will turn off if it senses there's nobody sitting in this seat, so kind of keep that in mind. Over here, I have it set to show kind of, again, the vehicle status information. You can also go into like a volume mode there, or the home page here, which brings up the status. You can also pull up Hulu, YouTube, a web browser, along with an HDMI port. So this is, again, kind of useful, although I personally would get car sick if I was looking at this sitting on the passenger side. Again, it's not necessarily needed, although it looks like there is a screen brightness here. That's with it on max brightness. So again, it could be brighter. This is where I kind of found the screen to be a little bit too dim, especially in bright sunlight. But overall, as you can see, it's very, very impressive. Once you kind of navigate the system, it's relatively easy to use. The ambient lighting in here is also kind of overwhelming. So many different themes and styles. You can also go to a customize mode and change it all to your liking. It certainly looks pretty nice at night. I was actually really impressed with the ambient lighting, how it lights up in the actual wood trim and the door panels and the footwells, although it's not overwhelming like you might find in some of its European competitors, of course. So this system is, of course, running off of Android Automotive. It was relatively quick and snappy and responsive, but it just needs CarPlay to be absolutely perfect, at least for me. Down here, you can see if you don't want to touch that, you can use this little controller here where you can kind of adjust this, but I have to say this isn't quite as intuitive. Most people are just going to reach up and touch that. I also don't like how cheap that sounds. A more satisfying click would have been nicer. There's an actual volume knob here, which is great, along with some shortcut buttons over here. You have two wireless phone charging pads here, along with cup holders where you can kind of adjust that if you guys have a different mug or something to put there. There's more of that glossy wood, nice padded center console here, along with a big center console storage area. You can see there are HDMIs in there, along with your 3 USB-C charging ports. Pretty nice size, of course. This also feels pretty sturdy. There's another storage compartment down here. And you can see there's a nice Alcantara material over the headliner. There's an interior camera here, along with your LED map lighting, and you can see the glass roof lets in a ton of light. Unfortunately, there is no retractable shade, and this doesn't open up to vent air, so I do find that to be a little infuriating. There's a digital camera rearview mirror. You can also go to a standard mirror if you guys don't like that view. So overall, along with the head-up display, it certainly feels like the ultimate Escalade in terms of luxury and technology. It's just missing one feature, the CarPlay integration, the phone integration, wireless, of course, that would make this system absolutely perfect. But I have to say, I think I also might prefer the system more in the Lincoln Navigator and Nautilus, just because it doesn't have the secondary touchscreen here where everything is controlled via the center screen here. So there is a little bit of, different decision making that Cadillac made here with the software and the interaction, but you can't deny how impressively modern this setup actually looks. Now moving into the back seat of the Escalade IQ, as you can see, the power opening and closing doors extend back here. And this is where most of the models you're gonna see have, actually all of them come with the captain's chairs. You cannot get a second row bench seat in this car, which I actually think they should consider offering it. As you can see, that Camilla Nuva Lux carries over back here with the same beautiful insert here with the perforations. These seats are technically the standard captain's chairs. For an extra $7,500, Cadillac will include a rear executive seat package, which includes heated, ventilated, massaging, powered second row seats with built-in tables, a center console, of course. That's part of a $7,500 upcharge, which my test car lacks, but you get around 43 inches of legroom back here. Technically, the executive rear seat package extends that to 45 inches, but still 43 is among the best you're gonna find. You can see material quality back here is the same as the front. You have beautiful leather with contrast stitch, that wood trim with the illumination portion. You can see metal speakers for the AKG audio, nice padded leather here, metal speakers here again, and down here, sadly, it is hard touch plastic. This vehicle is also lacking retractable shades. Either manual or power would have been nice considering the positioning and price point of this car. Now getting inside, it's lacking a grab handle here, so it's actually kind of annoying. I don't have anything to hold on to, so kind of hoist yourself in. Again, those running boards are not power extending, which is a little bit surprising, but if you want, you can close the door from back here by basically just doing that, or you can also just close it manually if you'd like. The door has a pretty solid sounding thunk. I forgot to mention that in the front seat area. But again, you can also go into here and use the power opening feature. I actually would have preferred if Cadillac would have just put a button over here. It would have been a little bit easier to access versus having to go into the screen here. So again, small little detail there that I think they should adjust. My test car does have the optional rear seat entertainment package. This is an extra 2,000 bucks, I believe. It basically just brings that screen over in the front area to the back where you can basically access the same streaming services, a web browser, a vehicle status as well. So that's pretty cool, along with, you know, being able to use wireless headphones. These screens, I believe, are like 12 inches, maybe a little bit bigger than that. They look nice. They look very modern. So if you guys don't feel like getting your kids an iPad and you just want something that's built into the screen, that certainly is an option. There's another screen down here, which this to me looks like maybe a 7-inch display where you can, again, control the ambient lighting back here if you'd like, which is pretty nice. Along with accessing your heated seats. Again, if you're looking for cooled seats in this model, you have to add that executive rear seat package. There's only heated seats back here. The executive package adds the heat cooled or heat ventilation and the massage function. So I kind of wish the ventilation was at least standard on all of the trims. In the second row, you don't have to spend extra for that. So that's a little bit of a packaging thing that I hope that they'll address. If you open this up, you can see pretty nice sized cup holders. You have your HDMI ports along with your 2 USBs. An actual power outlet down here, a household one, and you can see these seats, they are pretty comfortable and supportive. The Nuva Lux, again, feels almost like real leather. I like how there's a nice little armrest here. You can also move this seat forward and back, which is going to be necessary if you want to have actual space in the third row for actual adults. And then in terms of the headliner material, you can see it's that beautiful woven material. This comes into the second row for the glass roof, which lets in a ton of light. Not into the third row, as you can see, but the headroom space, even though there's a big panel roof, is still a solid couple inches maybe. So it's pretty good for somebody my height. Keep in mind, again, the executive rear seat package adds a little bit more legroom in the second row, but it also sacrifices that for in the third row if you guys want that package. Now getting back here, you can see without the executive rear seat package, getting back here is relatively easy. You basically pull on this once and then you pull on it again. That'll flip it out of the way. Unfortunately, this is not good if you guys have a child seat anchored there. You're gonna have to go through the middle area to get into the third row, which, as you can see, the third row does seat 3 people across. And once you put this back, as you can see, this actually doesn't bring the seat back into its original full back position. This is pretty much almost like halfway up, which, as you can see, it significantly eats down on the legroom space. But once you're back here and you're in the third row area, Cadillac says, I believe in this position, you have around 32 inches of legroom, which is not a lot. The gas-powered standard Escalade has around 34.9, so 35 inches of legroom. The L version of this car adds roughly 4 inches of additional legroom for around 35 back here. So that would give you the same legroom that's in the standard Escalade, but at least the vehicle is wide enough to accommodate 3 across. There are no heated seats back here. You do have a USB, a slightly padded area here with cup holders. This window is on the small side. Again, the L has a larger window, so it kind of creates a less claustrophobic feel. At least there are rear seat air vents in the ceiling. In the third row, in addition to the second row vents over there, you have the same USB over here on this side. And the seat back here doesn't feel like it's any of a cheaper material. It's the same Nuva Lux. And if I wanted to sit in the middle, you can see this is where you have gobs of legroom over here in the middle area. So again, with how wide this vehicle is, the middle seat actually isn't bad. There's just not really a comfortable headrest, although you can make this headrest go up. And then in terms of the headroom space back here, you can see the tapering roof does eat into the headroom a little bit, but it's also not bad for somebody my height at 5'7". Again, keep in mind with the seat over on this side up, there's plenty of legroom back here where you could fit 3 across, but it significantly eats into the space for the second row. So here we are back behind the wheel of the gargantuan Cadillac Escalade IQ. This vehicle is without a doubt from behind the wheel an Escalade, even though it's technically not built on the same body-on-frame architecture as the gas-powered Escalade. It's built off of the Ultium architecture because it shares that with the GMC Hummer EV. This thing feels excessive, it feels heavy, it feels massive, it feels every bit worthy of the Escalade badging that you'll find all over this car. Now, we are starting off with nearly a full charge, 94%. On a full charge, this thing is showing 495 miles of range, which is absolutely crazy. This car can do up to 460 miles according to GM. We'll talk about the range figures later on. I have the vehicle in its VMAX configuration, which unleashes the full 750 horsepower, 785 pound-feet of torque. You get 680 horsepower when you're not in VMAX. Cadillac says that combination in VMAX should be good for 0 to 60 in under 5 seconds. Now, the last one I tested out in San Francisco about a month and a half ago was kind of rainy and wet, and it did it in a little over 5 seconds. So let's go ahead and see what we can get on our usual stretch in these perfectly dry conditions here. So we have it in VMAX. We're gonna go ahead and brake torque it. Oh, this thing literally feels like it's about to lift off. It's squirming all over the road. 0 to 60 in 4.56 seconds. So in San Francisco, it was a little wet. The roads were damp. It was having trouble putting the power down, but that is a lot of drama. In fact, it's a little bit scary because this car wanders all over the place when you put your foot down and have it in the VMAX mode, because this car has so much power, so much weight. The rear end squats down, and literally you're kind of fighting to keep the vehicle straight. It actually feels like it has torque steer, which is really weird for an all-wheel drive, vehicle that weighs 4.5 tons like this. It just doesn't make sense to me how it feels like it has torque steer, which is really, really strange, but it's kind of a handful, and it's actually the most dramatic launch that I've ever felt for any kind of modern vehicle, let alone an electric modern vehicle. Let's try another run this time. We're not gonna brake torque it. It's creating some kind of a fake sound, but literally this thing is wandering all over the road. 4.8 seconds there. So that's with it more going slightly uphill. Seriously, guys, I have never had to fight for control to keep this thing going in a straight line. So not really sure what's going on there. I mean, we are on big, and I mean big, 35-inch tall, 24-inch wheels. They're Michelin's, I believe, all-season tires, a 275 width tire. So it's a big tire in all four corners. But you always feel this car's weight. Now, it does have rear wheel steering, which allows the rear wheels to turn around 7 degrees, which is not as much as the Hummer, but GM had to reduce the angle of turn to preserve the third row legroom, which isn't all that great compared to the gas-powered Escalade. So when you start, handling or just kind of trying to maneuver this vehicle, that's the word I was looking for, you get a sense that you're driving something big and heavy. It's also really odd feeling because the rear wheels at higher speeds, they turn in the same direction as the front to aid with stability. In lower speeds, they turn in the opposite direction, which shrinks the turning radius of this car to under 40 feet, which is kind of crazy considering, or it's crazy small considering how big this vehicle is. But when you start pushing it, the suspension feels soft, even in its VMAX setting here. It feels like it's designed for comfort, but at the same time, the big 24-inch wheels, even though we are on GM's Magno-Relogical dampers with airbags, air springs, you feel the road imperfections crash through the suspension and the body. So not really sure if there's any kind of more refining that GM can do. I mean, the last GM vehicle, the Silverado EV RST I tested with 24s, the ride quality wasn't great, but it also wasn't as horrible as the original Silverado EV that I tested. This is definitely better than the Silverado EV, but there are times where I'm kind of like, all right, it could use a smaller wheel. I would like to see this car be offered with a smaller 22-inch wheel to kind of compensate for the fact that the 24s may just be too big to give you the best ride quality for a vehicle of this caliber. Now, I turned off the VMAX setting here because I want to see what the acceleration difference is when you don't have the full 750 horsepower. So you basically just push a button on the steering wheel, the VMAX is off, and we're going to try another run here, 0 to 60 wise. Definitely feels noticeably slower, but it's also not wandering around the road as much as it was before, 5.35 seconds there. So with it in VMAX, it shaves almost a second off the 0 to 60 time, which doesn't surprise me. It adds a lot of power. I mean, 680 to 750 is a pretty big jump, and 615 torque to 785 is the reason why this thing is all over the road when you really start putting your foot down in VMAX mode. Now, I love the four-wheel steering because it really makes a car like this feel a lot easier to maneuver, but oh man, the G-forces this thing. I also like the spaceshipy sounds. It's definitely fun. I'm just not entirely sure it's refined enough for a vehicle like this. I mean, it's gonna possibly scare a lot of people when they first put their foot down. And if you're not an experienced driver with handling a vehicle this large and this heavy, I could see this becoming a problem for those of you who are kind of noobs and not used to driving cars like this. Now, the steering does have relatively good quickness. It's just not much in terms of feedback. It feels very artificial. The seats are comfortable and supportive. This is their Nuvolux fake leather material, a synthetic leather, but it feels every bit as plush as the real Napa leather that you get in the gas-powered Escalade, which is nice. The visibility in here is also good. I can see out of the front and the side quite nicely. The view out of the back is definitely not as great as the gas-powered Escalade because of that tapered down roofline, but you can fix that by just going into the digital camera review mirror. This car does come with GM's full suite of driver assistance, including their latest version of Super Cruise, which will activate automatic lane changes. It'll actually drive for long distances on the highway where it has the road mapped out. That's completely hands-free. Super Cruise is still one of the best in the industry, and this vehicle is very quiet. It glides down the road with a feeling of solidity, and it also doesn't have much in terms of road and wind noise, just that fake electric motor sounds when you have those turned on and off, which is either a good or a bad thing. The AKG 38 speaker sound system also does a wonderful job. If you guys are an audiophile, it's fantastic. Putting my foot down there, I just can't help myself. You definitely notice there's a slight hesitation even in VMAX mode, and then it just delivers all full 750 horsepower. So yeah, this thing is quick. It's not quite as fast as the last Escalade V that I tested. The V did it in around 4.4 seconds, but still, this thing is almost as fast, and it also has much better range, because the range in this vehicle, let's go ahead and talk about that. The Escalade V with its supercharged V8 will basically do around 300-ish miles of range on a full tank. This car on a full charge was showing 495 miles. And in my week's worth of testing, I wanted to test out that range. And I can confidently say this car has given me the best range that I've ever experienced in real world testing for an electric vehicle. I got around 410 miles of real world range, which is excellent. The last vehicle that broke 400 miles was the Lucid Air. And that car, again, was the range king for me. Now it's the Escalade IQ, which doesn't surprise me. It's got a battery pack that is 205 kilowatt hours. That's the reason why this thing is so freaking heavy, is because the battery is literally twice the capacity of most other vehicles. You can DC fast charge this up to 350 kilowatts. Cadillac says you can basically add around 100 miles of range in 10 minutes on a level 3 if you can find a 350 kilowatt. It takes a good 16 hours to charge this bad boy on my level 2 charger at home, because it'll only do up to 48 amps. And it'll only do like around 25 to 30 miles of range every hour. Keep in mind, there is an onboard charger of 19.2. If you guys have the extra amperage hooked up where it's an extra fast level 2, you could probably do it in under 12 hours. But again, my house does not have that extra feature, because it's not something you technically need. So even though this is an EV, it's still very much an electron guzzler, because it's excessive. It's not the most efficient, although it is more efficient at least than the GMC Hummer. I believe the coefficient of drag is like 0.33 or something like that, which is not great, but it's also not horrible, not like at least the Hummer is. So overall, the range of this vehicle is literally 100 miles more versus the Escalade V. It's almost as fast as well. So in reality, you could technically argue that it's a more efficient vehicle than the Escalade V, and it's almost as quick, and it's also cheaper. So if you guys are trying to decide between the supercharged V8 or the Escalade V or this vehicle, obviously there are some advantages of this car. The downside of this thing is it doesn't have the same kind of sounds of the Escalade V from the V8, and also it doesn't have quite as much interior space. But bravo for Cadillac for really pushing the envelope, because if you guys are literally looking for the ultimate electric luxury SUV that has tons of space and capability and room and range and fast charging, this vehicle itself is very much almost in a class of its own. So after spending a full week with the very first ever all-electric version of the Escalade, I have to say this vehicle is very much befitting of the Escalade name. Even though there are certain styling elements of this car, the rear three-quarter angle in particular, that doesn't really look like an Escalade. In fact, the looks of this car are deceiving, because some people actually thought that it's actually smaller versus the standard Escalade, when in reality it's a little over a foot longer. So Cadillac did a good job with kind of creating the essence of a smaller vehicle, even though it's not really smaller. As you guys also saw, acceleration is absolutely brutal. 0 to 60 in 4.5 seconds makes this vehicle almost as fast as the last supercharged V8 Escalade V that I tested. And while it does accelerate with the drama that I expect, I also also don't particularly love all of the torque steer and just the wallowiness and the fact that it skips all over the highway or the road when you're putting your foot down. It requires a little bit of a manhandle to kind of get it to go in a straight line, which I'm hoping they'll eventually work on with an updated version with some tweaks to the suspension. I would love to see them offer a smaller 22 or 23-inch wheel to improve the ride quality, although it does ride among the best that I've ever tested for this particular platform, riding on 24-inch wheels, but it never can get around the fact that it is, again, a massive wheel and tire package for this massive vehicle. I also love the fact that this vehicle essentially got the best range that I've ever tested in real-world driving conditions. Again, around 410 miles is absolutely incredible. It gets better range versus the gas-powered Escalade, and I suspect that's probably one of the reasons why they got rid of the diesel engine option in the Escalade, because they didn't want to have to compete with this model in terms of best range. Again, the diesel Escalade previously would go well over 500 miles, but again, 400 miles plus for a vehicle like this is absolutely crazy. So you can actually go on longer road trips. You can drive this thing all week long, maybe even 2 weeks, and not have to worry about plugging it in. Although when you do plug it in, it's going to be expensive, and it's also going to take a little bit longer to charge because the battery pack is so massive. Now, in terms of the interior, the 55-inch display is definitely a lot. In fact, I actually think I prefer the 48-inch display in the Lincoln Navigator, this car's corporate cousin. I do think that the screen is definitely modern. It's relatively easy to use. I don't like how there's no wireless CarPlay. As you guys know, the gas-powered Escalade has the CarPlay, but their electric models do not have CarPlay because GM seems to think that people who buy the EVs won't want it. I suspect they're going to have to backpedal on that and eventually retrofit CarPlay if they get enough complaints from customers and from dealerships. The interior is also luxurious, lots of, premium materials, decent build quality. Well, not decent, it's actually excellent build quality. There's nothing about this interior that really reminds me that it's a Chevy Tahoe or something like that. Not like the regular Escalade, where if you start poking around, you'll start to see some of that switchgear commonality. This very much feels like its own vehicle. The third row is a little bit on the smaller side, but that's kind of where you should just spend the extra $3,000 and buy the IQL, which is, again, a new model for 2026. And while the cargo area is among the biggest it's in the segment, if you're, again, replacing a gas-powered Escalade, you're gonna notice this has a little bit less space. But keep in mind, it's not the same platform. I think they did a good job considering, again, that this is built off of an entirely different architecture where they had to compromise interior space for the packaging of that big battery pack. Now, if you guys are looking to get your hands on the Escalade IQ, it's gonna cost you a pretty penny over the gas-powered Escalade because the base price of this model is around $127,000. The L is gonna cost you around $130,000, so it's not that much more for the longer wheelbase or for the longer length version with more interior space. If you guys want the luxury or the sport package, the sport trim, it's gonna cost you $500 extra. The big ticket option is basically whether you wanna go to the luxury 2 or the sport 2. That's $20,000 extra, but it's gonna upgrade to that 38 speaker AKG audio system. It'll have the power opening and closing doors, the full massaging seats. I mean, there's a lot of options that it gives you for that 20,000 bucks. It could be worth it, especially if you guys are already spending 130 grand. What's another 20,000 bucks? So all in with destination, my test car here comes to around $153,000. Which is actually a little bit cheaper versus if you built up an Escalade V. A V starts at over 150 grand. They're mostly around 165 to 170 grand. That's before dealer markups. Now, I personally think the Escalade V is probably gonna hold its value better than this vehicle is because, again, this is electric versus a supercharged V8. But again, what this car offers can't be ignored because it offers pretty much the same acceleration levels, better range versus the Escalade V. And even though it lacks the sound and character, again, this is just a more modern vehicle and you won't feel like you're being as wasteful, I guess, if you're driving this vehicle in rush hour traffic because of the regen brakes and the fact that it is electric. It's technically still more efficient versus a supercharged V8. But with all that said, I hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2025 Escalade IQ. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.